I'll share one of mine with you.
I feel you.
This is a genuine
I feel you.
friendship thing I'm talking about.
I feel you.
But if you play the way you play and you dedicate yourself to doing it, they will come. It's like that Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. You may have to put your arms around a couple guys and take them with you. But you can't drag them. You got to put your arms around and take them with you.
When Bill Russell picked the greatest basketball players ever, he didn't just name names randomly or follow what fans thought on social media platforms carelessly. He said, "He's my GOAT," then turned around and chose 7 legends who represented the absolute peak of basketball greatness across different eras and unique contexts and ways of playing the game. But here's what might shock you and make you question everything you thought you knew about basketball evaluation and excellence on the court, definitely. Russell's list left some fans confused and even angry because it didn't look like what we expected at all whatsoever. It didn't follow the internet debates of today. It didn't match the highlight reels or individual box scores that dominated the networks and news coverage. Some players everyone thought absolutely belonged were mysteriously missing from consideration entirely. Some players people questioned were definitely there and ranked highly on his list. So, what did the greatest team player in the entire history of basketball see that we all missed completely? What profound insight did Russell have that others lacked? What lens was he looking through that revealed a completely different picture of what real greatness actually means in the sport? The answer is a masterclass in what real greatness actually means, and it's nothing like the debates you see online today at all whatsoever. This wasn't Russell being contrarian just to get attention and generate controversy for publicity's sake. This was Russell explaining the actual architecture of championship excellence and what separates the truly great from everyone else completely and definitively in basketball. Quick favor, if you are enjoying this already, tap the hype feature and give this video some hype. It really helps these stories reach more hoops fans who should hear what Russell had to say about basketball and excellence and championship thinking. Let me take you back to 1997 exactly. It was the NBA's 50th anniversary celebration, a moment when the entire league looked back at everything it had built over 50 years of basketball history and development. Think about that scope for a moment and really consider it completely. 50 years of basketball history, hundreds of great players throughout that entire period, thousands of iconic moments that defined the sport and changed it forever. The NBA wanted to look back and understand what had made the sport truly great across all those decades of competition and growth and excellence. Bill Russell was in conversations with his rival and friend Wilt Chamberlain directly. Wilt was another legend, maybe the most dominant scorer the game had ever seen in his particular era of play and dominance. These weren't just casual talks over coffee at some restaurant somewhere. They were serious moments where two titans evaluated the sport they had personally shaped and built together over their careers. Russell and Wilt had defined what basketball could be at the highest level of excellence and competition. They had battled each other in epic contests that captivated the nation and built the league together. They had pushed the game forward with innovation and excellence. And now, as elders of the game, they were being asked to reflect on what mattered most to them about basketball and greatness. Russell had clear rules for what made a player truly great in his assessment, and those rules were fundamentally not about numbers in a box score or individual statistical dominance alone in any way whatsoever. Don't get me wrong, statistics matter significantly and can tell you something valuable about a player's impact on games and outcomes. But Russell refused to be ruled by them absolutely and completely, always without exception. Russell firmly believed winning was the only truly objective metric that truly mattered at the end of the day, ultimately and absolutely in basketball. When a game ended, the scoreboard was honest and never lied about the outcome of the contest. Everything else was politics and subjectivity and opinion and perception and bias. He saw MVP awards as inherently subjective and awarded by voters with personal preferences and opinions that changed yearly. Scoring titles were subjective and could vary based on pace and context significantly year to year. All-star selections could be popularity contests more than objective measures of excellence and skill level. But championships? Championships were absolutely not subjective at all whatsoever. Stats could lie if you looked at them wrong or cherry-picked data cleverly and selectively. You could cherry-pick statistics to make almost anyone sound great on paper, theoretically. But the final score never lied about the outcome of games. The championship trophy never lied about who succeeded and won definitively. You either won or you didn't win the championship. That was the absolute bottom line forever and always in Russell's evaluation. Russell deeply valued something he called presence above almost everything else in professional basketball. This is a term that didn't show up in any stat sheet or advanced metric nowadays, yet it was maybe the most important concept in his entire framework for evaluating greatness and quality of play on the court. Presence wasn't about scoring points or putting up big numbers on the board each night. It wasn't even directly about handling the ball or taking over a game in the traditional scoring sense. It was about dominating the entire atmosphere of the court without even having to do much physically or overtly. When Bill Russell walked onto a court, before the game even started, opponents felt it immediately and deeply in their bones. There was a weight to his existence on the court every single moment of the game, a mental pressure that affected everything around him psychologically. That concentration, that ability to force opponents to change their habits and deviate from their plan entirely, that was presence. It was psychological warfare at its finest. It was real and tangible and measurable, and it was perhaps the most valuable quality in basketball. Presence meant opponents adjusted their entire approach before tip-off, which gave Russell an advantage before the game even began. Russell looked for players who made their teammates better consistently and every night without fail. Not just players who were individually great, but players who lifted everyone around them to new levels of performance and excellence. He believed the primary value of any player was how much better they made the people they played with every single night, in competition and in games. A player could be talented and gifted, but if they didn't elevate their teammates to new heights, they weren't truly great in Russell's eyes and evaluation. That idea shaped everything about how he judged the game of basketball and greatness. It was a team-first perspective always in his mind. It was about winning games and championships together, not personal glory or individual stats and accolades and awards. Russell valued collective success over personal achievement always. Russell also believed that commitment separated those who lived their dreams from those who lived their lives, regretting missed opportunities forever and wasted potential. He saw commitment as the real margin of victory in basketball and sports at all levels. Most people thought it was athleticism alone that mattered most. Most people thought it was natural talent and genes determining winners. Russell knew better from his experience and success. It was commitment. It was the willingness to sacrifice your body and ego for the team and your teammates. It was mental toughness that mattered more than pure athleticism alone. Basketball intelligence mattered more than raw talent and natural abilities. The ability to outthink your opponent mattered more than overpowering them through strength and size alone. This philosophy permeated Russell's entire view of greatness and excellence. With these standards carefully developed over his career in basketball, Russell named 7 elite players who represented different types of greatness at the highest levels of the sport. Some were orchestrators, pulling the strings for their teams like great conductors of symphonies. Some were intellectual competitors, outthinking everyone else on the floor with basketball IQ. Some were foundational forces who changed what was possible for their entire franchises forever and built dynasties. Some were creative pioneers who expanded what the game could actually be and pushed boundaries. Some represented technical evolution, taking established principles and adding new dimensions and sophistication. And some showed relentless work ethic that demanded deep respect from everyone around them and everyone who witnessed their play. These 7 players, in Russell's mind, embodied the true architecture of championship greatness and excellence. Not one type of greatness alone. Multiple types working together, different expressions of excellence, and different pathways to immortality. Let's dive into Russell's 7 now, but we're going to work backwards through his list and his rankings. We start with the man who actually beat Russell in the finals and broke the dynasty. Here is number 7 on Russell's all-time list of greatest basketball players in history. Bob Pettit has one of the most powerful stories in Russell's entire philosophy of greatness and championship culture. Pettit was the only player to lead a team to a finals victory over Russell's Celtics during their dynasty run. Think about that for a single moment and let it sink in completely. Russell won 11 championships in 13 seasons of basketball. That's an unparalleled dynasty, maybe the most dominant run in American professional sports history. But in 1958, Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks stopped the Celtics completely. The Hawks broke through the dynasty with excellence and determination. It wasn't close either in that deciding Game 6 moment. Pettit delivered one of the most legendary performances in NBA Finals history, a performance that belongs in the ages, scoring exactly 50 points and grabbing 19 rebounds in the championship-clinching Game 6 victory. He was unstoppable that night. He was the difference maker. Russell was guarding him in the fourth quarter, hobbled with an ankle injury that limited his movement and mobility greatly, and Pettit scored 19 of St. Louis's final 21 points down the stretch. That's complete dominance when it mattered most to the team. Why did Russell respect this enough to include Pettit in his all-time 7 greatest players? Because Pettit represented something sacred to Russell, the will to win and relentless competition. Pettit averaged 26.4 points per game throughout his entire career across multiple seasons and eras. He made 11 All-Star teams, a remarkable accomplishment for any player. But it wasn't just about the stats and numbers alone. It was the relentless work ethic, the way Pettit approached his craft like a professional soldier who understood that winning mattered more than anything else in the world. Russell also had a personal connection with Pettit that deepened his respect significantly and profoundly. He fondly recalled a time when Pettit showed great respect to Russell's grandfather, a memory that added character and dignity to their fierce on-court rivalry. For Russell, Pettit was proof that excellence and genuine respect could coexist in professional sports and competition. Pettit was the guy who broke through the dynasty with his effort and excellence. Russell honored that with genuine admiration and recognition and respect. Pettit's inclusion on Russell's list was a tribute to the only man who had beaten him in the finals during his prime years. That's true class and sportsmanship and deep competitive respect for one another. Now let's go to number 6 on Russell's list of basketball greatness and excellence. Hakeem Olajuwon represented something different and evolved for the center position in basketball. If Pettit was the relentless worker and effort guy, Hakeem was the modern evolution of a position that Russell had pioneered and dominated throughout his career. Russell himself played center and pioneered how that position could dominate the game and control outcomes decisively. Russell lived in an era when centers defined the entire game through physical positioning, psychological intimidation, and strategic awareness of the court. Russell didn't just block shots, he made opponents mentally afraid of what might happen if they challenged him on the court. He altered offensive habits and strategies through pure presence and dominance. That was his gift and innovation at the position. Hakeem took that same philosophy that Russell had pioneered and evolved it into something new for the 1990s era. Hakeem had elite defensive footwork and movement, exceptional shot-blocking ability, and most importantly, he had the psychological intelligence and court awareness to make opponents believe he might block every single shot ever attempted. That mental warfare and tactical thinking was something Russell deeply understood and deeply respected about basketball excellence and competition. Russell saw Hakeem as a player who thought through the game completely before stepping on the court each night. Hakeem was a technician and scientist, not just a physical specimen with great athleticism and size alone whatsoever. In 1997, when Russell was having these conversations with Wilt, they discussed Hakeem specifically in context of other physical centers like Shaquille O'Neal, who relied more on pure strength and power alone. Russell preferred Hakeem's technical footwork and basketball intelligence over raw athleticism and power alone. He believed basketball was a game of habits, and habits were broken through intelligence, timing, and understanding, not through raw strength alone whatsoever. Hakeem won 2 NBA championships in his career and made 12 All-Star teams, a record of excellence. He averaged 26.94 points per game in his career. But what mattered to Russell was how Hakeem approached the game as a student who never stopped learning, never stopped refining his craft, never stopped thinking about how to reach the next level of excellence and mastery. Now here is number 5 on Russell's greatest list of all-time players. Oscar Robertson was nicknamed the Big O for good reason and complete justification and respect. Russell called Robertson's style mechanical yet flowing, like watching a chess match unfold on a basketball court in real time with purpose and intent. Robertson could do literally everything a player could do on the court excellently and consistently. He could pass with pinpoint precision and touch. He could shoot with confidence and consistency game after game. He could take over any situation on the floor, whether through pinpoint passes or clutch shooting in crucial moments when his team needed it most. He embodied relentless pursuit of victory in a way that matched Russell's own competitive fire perfectly and completely. What made Robertson truly historic was his incredible ability to dominate every single statistical category from the guard position simultaneously in the same season. In 1961 and 1962, Robertson became the very first player to average a triple-double for an entire season in basketball history. He averaged 30.1 points, 9.9 assists, and 10.7 rebounds per game consistently. That was unprecedented and revolutionary. That was something that had never been done before in basketball or any era. That forced the entire basketball world to see the guard position in an entirely new light and reevaluate what was possible. Russell noted that Robertson was never easy to guard because his movements were unpredictable and his strategic mind could outthink any defense put in front of him. Robertson had 12 All-Star selections to his name. He won one championship with the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971 with Kareem. Russell's respect for Robertson was mutual and deep from competition. They competed during the 1960s when both were frequently contending for the league's MVP award and honors. They understood each other's competitive excellence deeply and respected it. Robertson represented the archetype of the orchestrator, the player who could control any situation on the floor through vision, understanding, and relentless will to win the game. He was a basketball scientist who played the game with precision and purpose and excellence. Now let's get to number 4 on this elite list of basketball greats. Elgin Baylor represented a unique case and reveals something important about Russell's thinking and philosophy of evaluation. Here's where Russell's philosophy gets interesting and reveals something profound about his true evaluation system and standards used. Elgin Baylor never won an NBA championship in his career, unfortunately. He was a superstar, one of the greatest players to ever play the game of basketball, who never got a ring despite his talent. That usually disqualified a player from Russell's elite tier forever, and absolutely. Russell's criteria emphasized winning above all else, but Baylor made Russell's list anyway, and that tells you something important about how Russell truly thought about the game beyond just championships alone. Baylor was the bridge between old basketball and new basketball, between the ground-bound era and the high-flying modern game. He played above the rim in ways that were absolutely revolutionary for his era and time. Russell specifically highlighted Baylor's hang time and mid-air creativity that seemed impossible for the era of play and development. Baylor could improvise in the air like very few players ever could in basketball history. He was unpredictable, dangerous, a constant threat that Russell, the defensive genius, had to game plan around completely. Baylor averaged 27.4 points per game throughout his career in the league. He made 11 All-Star teams in his career. His points total was 23,149. A massive amount for his era. But here's the crucial key insight that explains why Russell included him in his list. Russell recognized that Baylor's presence on the court was so dominant that it elevated the Lakers into perennial contenders year after year. Even without a championship, even without that ultimate trophy, Baylor was a force that changed what was possible offensively. He played the game with artistic flair and creativity, taking the sport to a level that very few others could reach. That was Russell's standard for art in basketball, reaching levels of excellence and greatness that few could touch or match. Now we move to number 3 on Russell's rankings of excellence and greatness in basketball, Larry Bird. If Russell had to choose one player for a single must-win game, it would be Larry Bird without hesitation or doubt whatsoever. That statement alone tells you absolutely everything about Russell's respect for Bird and how he evaluated greatness and clutch performance in games. Bird had what Russell called a total game at basketball in the sport. He could score, rebound, pass, and defend with excellence and consistency. He understood positioning and angles on the court. He had technical correctness, something Chamberlain himself praised as a rarity in an era where athleticism often overshadowed fundamentals and basics. But more than anything, Bird had late-game confidence and basketball intelligence that was almost supernatural in nature. In 1982, Bird actually explained his philosophy to Russell himself in a conversation about winning. When a game was tied in the final minutes, Bird said he felt a profound sense of confidence because he knew exactly how to win the game. Scoring was just one asset in his complete toolkit of abilities. He would also play tough defense consistently. He would take charges for his team without hesitation. He would fight for steals and loose balls with effort. He would do whatever the game demanded of him. He was willing to do anything necessary to win games. This holistic approach resonated deeply with Russell completely. A player's presence should dominate the atmosphere and force opponents to deviate from their habits and strategies. Bird did that consistently night after night. He won 3 NBA championships in his career and made 12 All-Star teams. His career points total was 21,791 points. But the real stat was his reliability in moments that absolutely mattered most to his team. Bird was the intellectual competitor archetype that Russell valued most. He was a basketball genius who outthought opponents and executed with precision and purpose always. He understood the game at the deepest level of strategy and competition and excellence. Bird represented excellence through total dominance, not just scoring, but through presence and willingness to do whatever his team needed to win games. Now we get to number 2 on Russell's all-time list of basketball excellence and greatness. Michael Jordan. This is where it gets truly fascinating and reveals important truths about evaluation and excellence in basketball. In 1997, even before Jordan had secured his final 2 championships of the second three-peat, Russell had already identified him as a member of the foundational tier of basketball greatness. When Russell presented Jordan with his 5th MVP award in 1997, he famously stated that Jordan was the best ever in basketball history. Think about that carefully and deeply consider what it means completely. Russell won 11 championships in his career. Russell was the greatest team player in basketball history by his own standards, and he called another player the best ever. That wasn't something Russell said lightly or easily to others or in public. Russell's respect for Jordan was not based on volume scoring alone or point totals per game. It was based on how those points were achieved and their ultimate impact on winning basketball games consistently. Russell believed a great player must outthink their opponent strategically. He recognized in Jordan a strategic mind that matched his own defensive genius. Russell saw Jordan's strategic mind working on the court constantly. Jordan studied opponents intently and carefully. He anticipated moves before they happened. He outmaneuvered defenders with precision and skill. He was an artist at basketball. Russell pointed to specific moments as evidence of excellence and artistry. Jordan's 1986 performance, when he scored 63 points in a playoff game after returning from a significant injury, showed a player reaching levels of artistry that few others could ever touch. Then there was the 55-point game against the Knicks in 1995, the double nickel game, another display of skill at its absolute highest level. Russell defined Jordan as a winner first and a scorer second. That distinction was crucial to understanding Russell's view. Jordan didn't just put up points for statistics. He put up points in ways that made his teammates better, that elevated his team's chances of winning decisively, that dominated the atmosphere of the game. Jordan had 6 championships total in his career. He was the leader of the 1990s just as Magic had been the leader of the 1980s, and Russell had been the leader of all time. That continuity of winning excellence across eras was something Russell understood and respected deeply. And now, number 1 on Russell's list of basketball excellence and all-time greatness, Magic Johnson. Russell's admiration for Magic Johnson was rooted in the most fundamental similarity between them, their competitive DNA at the very core of their basketball identity. Both men were winners at their core fundamentally. Both men led their teams with an unwavering winner mentality that never wavered or broke. Both men understood that the objective of basketball was to win championships and titles, and everything else was secondary to that mission. Russell deeply respected Johnson's ability to lead a team with excellence and purpose. Johnson had 5 NBA championships in his career and 12 All-Star selections. But the point was how Johnson used his unique gifts to lift his team and everyone around him positively. Russell believed that the most important attribute a team could possess was unselfishness and sacrifice for the collective. Magic's style of play was the physical manifestation of that ideal completely. Magic prioritized the assist over scoring. Magic loved the fast break and tempo. Magic made his teammates better through pure vision and joy and positive energy. Russell spoke about joy as a vital component of winning consistently and throughout basketball. He said that joyless victory was like eating at a luxury restaurant when you weren't hungry. In Magic, Russell clearly saw a player who radiated joy-like energy, filling his teammates and compelling them to perform at their highest level. Magic orchestrated the Showtime Lakers through strategic manipulation of pace and tempo. It was about controlling the atmosphere through positive energy and relentless competence. Russell noted that Magic, like himself, was a player who could influence the final score without leading the league in scoring per game. Magic's game was about team elevation and winning together. That shared philosophy made Magic a cornerstone of Russell's hierarchy of greatness. Magic was the quintessential orchestrator, the player who made everyone around him better, the leader who fully understood that championships were built on team, not individual achievement alone or statistics. People ask why Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wasn't on this list, and it is a fair question, and it's a fair question that comes up constantly when people discuss Russell's rankings. Kareem was the all-time leading scorer in basketball history at that time. He had 6 MVP awards to his name, tied with Russell himself. Both Russell and Wilt omitted him from their lists completely, which surprised many people. Some critics argued Kareem's numbers came from a weaker 1970s era of basketball. Some said he was the second best player on Lakers teams behind Magic Johnson himself in importance. Russell's criteria emphasized presence and dominating the atmosphere of games with invisible leadership. Some felt Kareem wasn't feared like Jordan or Bird were by their opponents. There were suggestions of personal friction between Wilt and the younger Abdul-Jabbar that may have influenced opinions. For Russell, who defined winning through team elevation and strategic manipulation of opponents' game plans, Kareem's style may have seemed too individualistic or too dependent on great guard play in his later years. This omission highlights that greatness is subjective, even among objective evaluators and legends of the game. Even champions disagree about what truly makes a player all-time great. Russell's perspective offers one viewpoint, but it's not the only way to evaluate players across eras. But all 7 had the ability to transform teams into dynasties or perennial contenders consistently and repeatedly. All demonstrated commitment that separated dreamers from regretters forever. All played through injury and adversity for their teams and their cities. All understood sacrifice for winning games and pursuing championships. Russell's own approach was strategic leadership and excellence at the highest levels. He memorized footwork and moves of opponents obsessively, obsessed over timing and angles of attack, sought to outthink opponents before the tip-off started. He saw these traits in Bird's basketball intelligence and Robertson's mechanical precision and control. A player understanding their strengths, limitations, and roles they were assigned could reach unattainable levels of success otherwise. This philosophy explained his deep admiration for Hakeem's technical footwork and Magic's transition leadership and pace control. Both forced opponents to deviate from their standard habits and comfort zones. The foundational tier Russell identified in Jordan was merging high-volume scoring with strategic team elevation and winning mentality. That combination was rare and valuable and worth celebrating. Russell's list was ultimately a testament to winning as a fundamental requirement and team play above all else. He believed professional sports' true payoff was pursuing excellence consistently and reaching levels few could achieve in their lifetime. By selecting these 7, Russell ensured foundational era values and principles would be recognized and celebrated: creativity, work ethic, basketball intelligence, presence, commitment, and relentless drive to win championships. Russell's identity as the greatest team player in history was his primary lens for viewing all players in basketball history. His respect for the journey and competing at the highest level built mutual admiration with Pettit and Robertson. Even with immense success and accolades, Russell remained humble about his beginnings and origins personally. He achieved success through hard work and self-sacrifice and personal dedication to excellence. That humility let him appreciate the greatness in others deeply. He recognized Baylor's hang time as pure basketball art. He saw Magic's leadership as sacred and timeless. He understood that individual brilliance becomes art at levels few can reach in any sport. Russell's list remains a powerful reflection of a man who transformed a team into a dynasty and understood motivation, sacrifice, and teamwork, as well as any leader in history. Through that 1997 interview, the basketball world gained understanding of true greatness in the eyes of the ultimate winner. Magic, Jordan, Bird, Baylor, Robertson, Hakeem, and Pettit were pillars of the sport as defined by the man who built its most enduring dynasty. Their presence dominated the atmosphere of every game and left an indelible mark on professional basketball history forever. The lesson Russell taught with his list was profound and timeless for all basketball fans. Winning matters above all else. Team elevation matters significantly. Commitment and mental toughness matter deeply. Presence and basketball intelligence matter far more than raw stats and scoring numbers alone. In a sport obsessed with individual achievements and personal glory, Russell reminds us that greatness is ultimately measured by championships and the ability to lift teammates to greatness. His 7 selections represent the evolution of basketball across eras and the different ways excellence can manifest on the court. From Pettit's relentless work ethic to Magic's joyful orchestration of teammates, from Bird's intellectual prowess to Jordan's strategic dominance, From Robertson's mechanical precision to Hakeem's technical evolution to Baylor's creative artistry, these players showed that there are many different pathways to basketball immortality. They all shared Russell's core philosophy. Winning is everything, and winning together is the only way that truly matters in the end. Russell's legacy lives through these seven, through his philosophy, and through the understanding that greatness transcends individual accomplishment. So here's my final question for you to consider deeply. Which of these seven surprised you the most in Russell's selection? Who do you think Russell would add if he were ranking players today in 2026? Let me know in the comments below and share your thoughts with the community. If you learned something meaningful about real greatness from Russell's unique perspective and evaluation system, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into basketball history and the legends who built this game into what it is today. Thanks for watching this journey through Russell's mind, and I'll see you next time.
Sixers, and they get inside.
He went over to Chala.
He's got it.
They've escaped.
When Julius Erving said he's my GOAT, he was not chasing a trend. He was not trying to go viral. He was not copying anyone else's list. He was speaking from a place that most people in sports today have completely forgotten about. He was speaking from memory, from history, from a time when basketball was still being invented by the men who dared to imagine it differently. And when his list came out, the internet went quiet for a second. Then it exploded. People were confused, people were frustrated. Some were flat out angry. Where was LeBron James? Where was Kobe Bryant? Where was Shaquille O'Neal? Where was Stephen Curry? These are the names that dominate every argument today. These are the names on every highlight reel, every podcast, every debate show. So when Dr. J released his 7 favorite players of all time, and none of those modern giants made the cut, a lot of people started asking the same question. Has Julius Erving lost his mind? Is he just being stubborn? Is he too old to understand what basketball is now? But here's the thing about that reaction. It tells you more about us than it does about him. Because Julius Erving is not a random former player giving a hot take. He is one of the architects of the game you're watching right now. He scored 30,026 professional points. He won 4 MVP awards. He won 3 championships. He played in 2 different leagues and changed the look of basketball in both of them. When Dr. J speaks about greatness, he is not guessing. He has lived inside it. And if you love old school basketball greatness like this, go ahead and give this video some hype right now. Hit that button. Stories like Dr. J's deserve to be pushed back into the light. Because what he is saying is not bitter, it is not confused, it is wise. And once you understand where Julius Erving came from, once you understand the road he walked, his list starts to make perfect sense. Dr. J has 2 rules that almost nobody talks about. The first rule is simple. His core group of favorite players was locked in his mind when he was about 15 years old. He watched those men play. He studied them. He built his entire understanding of basketball greatness around what they did. And that core has never changed. Not once. The second rule is just as firm. He does not rank active players. He will not do it. He believes a career has to be completely finished before you can truly judge it. He has said it plainly. Let them get finished. That is his position. A legacy is a closed book, not a live debate. So when fans ask why LeBron James is not on the list, the answer is not that Dr. J disrespects LeBron. The answer is that LeBron's story is not over yet. And Dr. J refuses to judge a story that has not ended. Now, let us talk about the 7 players Julius Erving loves most. We are going to count them down. We are going to start from number 7 and work all the way to number 1. And by the time we get to the end, you will understand something about basketball that most highlight packages will never show you. Number 7. Nate "Tiny" Archibald. This is the one that surprises people the most. When Julius Erving sat down and named his 7 favorite players, he passed over Larry Bird. He passed over Hakeem Olajuwon. He passed over Tim Duncan. He passed over players who won multiple championships. Players who changed entire franchises. Players who are carved into the Mount Rushmore of their positions. And he chose Tiny Archibald instead. At first glance, that sounds almost impossible to defend. Tiny Archibald stood 6 feet and 1 inch tall, in a league full of giants that is practically small. He played in an era when big men ruled everything. Centers dominated the game. Size was the most important thing on the floor. And here was this quick little guard from the streets of New York, trying to survive in a world built against him. But here's what Nate Archibald did that nobody else has ever done. Not before him, not after him. In the 1972-73 season, Tiny Archibald led the entire NBA in both scoring and assists at the same time. He averaged 34, 0 points per game and 11, 4 assists per game in the same year. Think about what that means. He was the best scorer in the whole league, and the best playmaker in the whole league, in the same season. That has never happened again in the history of professional basketball. It has been over 50 years. Nobody has come close. But for Julius Erving, the numbers are only part of the story. Dr. J grew up loving the playgrounds of New York. He understood the language of street ball. He understood what it meant to be fast, to be creative, to play with joy and fearlessness. Tiny Archibald was built from that same world. He brought the transition game. He brought the flair, he brought the speed, he brought the courage to be small in a big man's sport and still find a way to be the best person in the building. Erving played in the ABA for years. The ABA was a league that loved fast play. It loved creativity. It loved players who could push the pace and make the crowd hold their breath. Tiny Archibald fit that spirit perfectly. He was not just a player, he was a style. He was proof that you did not need to be huge to be great. You needed to be fearless. And in Dr. J's world, fearlessness is everything. Think about what it takes to do what Tiny Archibald did. You are a 6'1" guard in a league where everybody is bigger than you. Every center is a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier. And yet Tiny found a way not just to survive, but to be the very best player in the building on most nights. He was not just fast, he was smart. He knew exactly where to go with the ball before he even caught it. He could thread passes through gaps that other players never even saw. And when he had space, he could score from anywhere on the floor. Dr. J grew up loving the playgrounds of New York. That world produced a style of play that was faster, more creative, and more expressive than anything being taught in any gym. And Tiny Archibald carried all of that into the professional game without losing a single drop of it. He did not adjust himself to fit the NBA. He made the NBA adjust to him. For Julius Erving, who carried that same spirit into the professional ranks, Tiny Archibald was proof that the game's soul could survive in the big leagues. Number 6. Jerry West. Not everyone who watches basketball today knows what Jerry West really was. They might know that his silhouette is the official logo of the NBA. They might have heard his name. But the full picture of what Jerry West meant to the game is something that younger fans have mostly missed. And Julius Erving has not missed a single frame of it. Jerry West was the standard of what a shooting guard could be. He had a pure, high-release jump shot that defenders could not get to. It was fast. It was clean. It was almost impossible to block. He could score from anywhere on the perimeter. He could create off the dribble. He could pass. He could defend. He had no real weakness that opponents could attack. But what truly set Jerry West apart was what he did when the game was on the line. In big moments, in pressure situations, in playoff games, West was ice cold. He earned the nickname Mr. Clutch for a reason. He showed up when it mattered most. That is the hardest thing for any player to do consistently. And West did it over and over throughout his career. He led the Los Angeles Lakers to 9 NBA Finals appearances. 9. The NBA Finals is the hardest stage in the sport to reach, and he reached it 9 times. His scoring, his toughness, and his will to compete became the measuring stick for every guard who came after him. For Erving, who watched West play during those formative years as a teenager, West showed what guard play was supposed to look like. He showed that a smaller player could be elite, that skill and intelligence could beat size, that pure shooting and competitive fire could carry a team to the biggest moments in the sport. When Dr. J thinks about the backcourt, Jerry West is one of the first 2 names that come to mind without any hesitation. He is untouchable in that spot, and when you understand why, you start to understand the kind of basketball education Julius Erving gave himself before he ever played a single professional game. What people often miss about Jerry West is that he was not just a scorer. He was a complete guard. His defense was elite. He pressured the ball, got into passing lanes, and made the job of opposing ball handlers miserable every single night. And his will to compete was unmatched. There are players who shrink under finals pressure. Jerry West was the opposite. He expanded under pressure. He became more focused, more precise, more dangerous. The bigger the moment, the sharper he got. That is a quality you either have or you do not. And West had it in amounts that very few players in the history of the sport have ever matched. Julius Erving recognized that quality because he had it himself. He knew what it felt like to want the ball in the biggest moments. And watching West do it year after year gave young Julius Erving a model for what a great competitor truly looks like. Number 5. Oscar Robertson. If Jerry West is the standard of the shooting guard position, then Oscar Robertson is the standard of something even bigger. Oscar Robertson is the standard of what a guard can be when every single limit is removed. Oscar Robertson was 6 feet and 5 inches tall. That is enormous for a guard, especially in the era he played in. And he used every inch of that size to do things that smaller guards simply could not do. He could post up guards who were shorter than him. He could shoot over defenders who tried to crowd him. He could pass through any defense with his vision. He could rebound from the guard position. He could control an entire game by himself. In his first 5 professional seasons, Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double every single season. A triple-double means at least 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists in a game. Averaging that across an entire season is almost unthinkable. He did it across 5 straight years. That level of all-around performance was not matched for over 50 years in the NBA. Before anyone used the word positionless basketball, before anyone talked about players who can do everything, Oscar Robertson was already doing it. He did not fit any single position because he was better than everyone at every position. He was a complete basketball player at a time when most players were only expected to do 1 or 2 things well. Julius Erving watched Oscar Robertson and saw something he valued more than almost anything else in the game. Total control. Not just scoring control, not just playmaking control, full, complete control of the basketball game from the guard position. Erving, who himself was a dominant rebounder in college and a versatile scorer in the ABA, recognized a kindred spirit in Robertson. A player who refused to be limited? A player who made the entire game smaller by being bigger than all of it. That is why Oscar Robertson is untouchable in Erving's backcourt. It is worth pausing on what it meant to average a triple-double for 5 full seasons in today's game. A player who gets a triple-double in a single game is celebrated. Oscar Robertson averaged it over entire years, every game, home or away. Early season or late playoff push. He did this while leading his team, guarding the other team's best backcourt player, and affecting the game in every possible way. He was doing everything all the time, Dr. J loved this because he understood it. In the ABA, Erving was not just a scorer, he was a rebounder, a playmaker, a defensive force. He wanted to affect the game in every way possible. And Robertson was the clearest example in history of what that total commitment to the full game looked like at the guard position. Robertson also won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks in 1971, teaming with a young Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 2 of Dr. J's top 7 players on the same team, winning together for Erving. That was not a coincidence. That was just what happens when true greatness meets more true greatness. Number 4, Wilt Chamberlain. There has never been anyone like Wilt Chamberlain in the history of basketball. Not before him, not since. When you talk about physical dominance, when you talk about what one body can do to an entire sport, Wilt Chamberlain is the only conversation. He scored 100 points in a single game. 100 points. That number still sounds made up. It sounds impossible, but it happened. And it did not happen because Wilt was playing against bad players. It happened because Wilt was so physically overpowering that the defense had no real answer for what he was doing. He averaged over 50 points per game for an entire season. Think about that for one moment. 50 points per game. Every game for a full season. The very best scorers in the modern NBA average around 30 points per game and are celebrated as historic. Wilt averaged 50. He was operating in a dimension that no other player has ever touched. His size, his strength, his athleticism, and his will to dominate forced the NBA to rewrite its own rulebook. The league changed rules specifically to limit what Wilt could do. When a sport has to change its rules because of one single player, that player has already proven something that statistics cannot fully capture. He has proven that he is bigger than the game as it was designed. Julius Erving includes Wilt Chamberlain in his untouchable frontcourt because Erving understands what true physical dominance means. He faced physical centers himself in the ABA. On his very first professional game, he challenged Artis Gilmore, who was 7 feet and 2 inches tall, and Dan Issel, who was 6 feet and 9 inches tall. He drove into that paint, hung in the air, and dunked on both of them so hard that he fell backward to the floor. He knew what it felt like to test your game against the biggest bodies in the sport. And Wilt Chamberlain was the biggest body of them all, not just in size, in force, in impact, in the way he changed the competitive balance of every game he played. Dr. J knows that no list of basketball's greatest is honest if Wilt's name is not somewhere near the top. There is something else that makes Wilt Chamberlain's legacy remarkable. Something that often gets lost when people only focus on the scoring numbers. Wilt could do everything. Late in his career, he intentionally stopped scoring as much and focused on rebounding and assists. He led the league in assists one season. A 7-foot center who led the league in assists. He did it because he wanted to prove he could. He was not just a physical specimen. He was a basketball thinker who happened to be built like a monument. Irving respects that more than most people understand, because he lived inside that world. He was the player who flew, and he had the deepest respect for the players who had the weight to make the ground shake when they moved. Number 3. Bill Russell. Here is something that separates Julius Erving from almost every sports analyst you will ever hear. He does not only value scoring, he does not only value flash, he does not only value highlight plays, he values winning. He values the players who figured out how to make their team better in ways that never show up in a box score. Bill Russell is the greatest example of that in the history of the sport. Bill Russell won 11 NBA championships in 13 seasons with the Boston Celtics. 11 titles in 13 years. That is a record across all major North American professional sports. No team in football, baseball, basketball, or hockey has ever achieved anything close to that kind of sustained winning. And at the center of every single one of those championships was Bill Russell. But here is what makes Russell's story so fascinating. He did not win those championships by scoring. His career scoring average was about 15 points per game. That is solid, but it is not the kind of number that makes people think GOAT. Russell won by doing something harder and rarer. He changed the way the center position worked. Before Russell, the center was mostly a scoring position. You stood in the post, you caught the ball, you turned around and scored. That was the job. Russell threw all of that away. He turned the center into a defensive command post. He blocked shots with surgical precision. He positioned his body in a way that made it almost impossible to get a clean look near the basket. He controlled the glass. He started the fast break with outlet passes that turned defense into offense in less than a second. He used his mind to understand angles and tendencies in a way that made him the smartest defensive player on the floor every single night. And his teammates won, again, and again, and again. Julius Erving played in the ABA, a league that valued fast break basketball and defensive energy. He understood what it meant to have an anchor in the paint. He understood that a great defensive center changed everything about how you could play on offense. He saw in Bill Russell the player who proved that the most valuable thing on a basketball court is not the player who scores the most. It is the player who makes winning the only possible outcome. That is who Bill Russell was, and that is why he is number 3 on this list. There is a deeper layer to the Bill Russell story that connects directly to Julius Erving's own basketball DNA. Russell was the anchor of a fast break system. He would block a shot or grab a defensive rebound, and then immediately fire an outlet pass to a guard streaking up the floor. That chain of events, defense into offense in one heartbeat, was the engine of the Boston Celtics dynasty. It is also the engine of every exciting team that has played basketball since. The ABA, where Erving built his game, was a league that ran, a league that pushed the pace. And that whole style traces back in a direct line to what Bill Russell made possible in Boston. He proved that fast break basketball could win championships. He proved it could dominate an era. When Erving looks at Bill Russell, he sees a player who changed the DNA of the sport, not through scoring or flash, but through intelligence, positioning, and a commitment to winning at all costs. 11 championships, 13 seasons, one of the greatest winners in the history of American professional sports. Dr. J respected that more than almost anything else. Because at the end of the day, nobody cares about individual statistics. They care about who won. Number 2, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Julius Erving has a favorite player. We will get to him in a moment. But when you ask Dr. J who the greatest basketball player of all time is, the answer is not his emotional favorite. The answer is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And the reasoning is airtight. Kareem is Dr. J's GOAT, not because of one season, not because of one shot, but because of everything. The full weight of a full career. The total sum of a complete life in basketball. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar won 6 NBA championships. He did it in 2 completely different places, with 2 completely different supporting casts. He anchored the Milwaukee Bucks into a dynasty early in his career. Then he moved to Los Angeles and anchored the Showtime Lakers into one of the most beloved dynasties in the history of the sport. Different teams, different decades, different rosters, same result, championships. He won 6 MVP awards. That is the most in NBA history, 6 times. The entire league looked around at every player on every team and said the same thing. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the best basketball player in the world, 6 times. He finished his career with 38,387 regular season points. That is the all-time record in the NBA. He set it in an era with no three-point line providing easy bonus points. He set it without the advantage of modern sports science, modern nutrition, and modern training methods. He set it by playing at an incredibly high level from his 20s all the way into his 40s. And the weapon that made all of it possible is the most beautiful and devastating move in basketball history, the skyhook. Kareem would catch the ball on the low block, take one step, extend his arm high above his head, and release the ball in a soft arc toward the basket. It was unblockable. Defenders tried for 2 decades to stop it. Nobody found an answer. The shot was geometrically perfect. It was physically unreachable. It was basketball architecture. For Julius Erving, who values skill, longevity, winning, and durability above everything else in his GOAT evaluation, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar checks every single box. He was not just great for a moment, he was great for a generation. And that is what separated him from everyone else in Erving's mind. Think about what it means to win 6 MVP awards. That is not luck. That is the whole league, across different decades and different styles of play, arriving at the same conclusion 6 separate times. The best basketball player in the world is wearing number 33. Kareem also played through the most dramatic changes the sport has ever seen. He played in the slow, methodical NBA of the early 1970s. He played in the wide-open Showtime era of the 1980s. He adapted. He remained dominant across all of it. And the skyhook. Defenders spent 20 years trying to stop it. Nobody ever did. The shot was released so high that no human being could get to it without fouling. It was the safest, most unstoppable offensive weapon in the history of the game. And Kareem used it 38,387 times on his way to the all-time scoring record. That is Dr. J's GOAT. And honestly, when you lay it all out, it is very hard to argue. Now we are at number 1. The player Julius Erving has called his absolute favorite of all time. The player who changed what Dr. J thought was possible. The player who, without ever knowing it, created the blueprint that Julius Erving would spend his entire career perfecting. Number 1. Elgin Baylor. Before there was Dr. J, there was Elgin Baylor. And that is not just a statement about timing. That is a statement about lineage, about where things come from, about who imagined the path first. Elgin Baylor did something in basketball that nobody had ever done before him. He took the game off the ground. He introduced a vertical dimension to the small forward position that simply did not exist until he showed up. Before Baylor, basketball was mostly horizontal. Players moved side to side. They set up plays, they made passes, they caught and shot from their feet. The game was organized, methodical, and earthbound. Baylor changed all of that. He drove toward the basket and then refused to land. He hung in the air. He created mid-air body control that defenders had never seen and did not know how to guard. He used hanging jump shots, creative drives, and acrobatic layups to score in ways that looked like they belonged to a different sport. His moves looked improvised because they were. He was making up new basketball in real time, every night, in front of crowds that could not believe what they were seeing. He made the small forward position feel like art. Julius Erving watched Elgin Baylor as a teenager, and something clicked inside him. He looked at what Baylor was doing, looked at his own body, looked at his own instincts, and recognized something. He recognized that this was the path. This was the language. This was the style of play that fit who he was. He modeled his own game after Baylor. He took what Baylor showed him, and then he made it louder. He made it higher. He made it longer. When Dr. J entered the ABA with the Virginia Squires at 21 years old, he brought all of that vertical creativity with him and turned up the volume on it. He averaged 27, 3 points and 15, 7 rebounds per game in his first season. He led the league in offensive rebounds. In his very first professional game, against the Kentucky Colonels and their massive front court of Artis Gilmore and Dan Issel, Erving drove to the rim and threw down a dunk so powerful that it knocked him flat on his back. He was 21 years old. He was fearless. He had learned from watching Baylor that the air was the safest place to be. When you look at Irving's college career, you start to see how much he had already internalized Baylor's lessons. At the University of Massachusetts, Irving averaged 26, 3 points and 2 rebounds per game. He is one of only 5 players in the history of NCAA men's basketball to average more than 20 points and 20 rebounds per game. On his 21st birthday, he put up 36 points, 32 rebounds, and 7 assists against Syracuse, in front of a crowd that had packed beyond its limit just to watch him play. This was Baylor's influence in action. Total control of the game from the wing. Scoring, rebounding, passing, creating, refusing to be limited to just one part of the game. In 1972, there was an off-season exhibition called the Super Game. It brought together the best players from the ABA and the NBA to compete on one court. During that game, Irving stole the ball from Paul Silas and drove past Archie Clark. Then he took off from the free throw line and threw down one of the most legendary dunks in basketball history. While a backpedaling Oscar Robertson, one of his own untouchable heroes, watched with his mouth open in amazement. Dr. J did not just admire his heroes, he played against them. He performed in their presence. He tested himself on the same floor as the men he had worshipped as a kid, and then he showed that he belonged. In 1976, Irving won the first ever ABA slam dunk contest at the All-Star Game. He took off from the free throw line and glided through the air as if Elgin Baylor's memory was carrying him. It was the most famous dunk in the history of the contest. It became the image that defined what a dunk contest could be. In 1977, after the ABA and NBA merged and Irving joined the Philadelphia 76ers, he went to the NBA Finals for the first time. He faced Bill Walton and the Portland Trail Blazers. In Game 6 of that series, he executed a thunderous dunk over Walton, one of his untouchable heroes, on the biggest stage, in front of the whole world. In 1980, in the NBA Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, Irving performed what many people still call the single most beautiful play in basketball history. He drove the baseline, went behind the backboard, floated through the air, and released a reverse layup on the other side of the glass with the softest touch imaginable. He evaded Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, his own personal GOAT pick, and Mark Landsberger at the same time. The Lakers won that series. A rookie named Magic Johnson was unbelievable, but nobody who was in the building that night forgot what Dr. J did on that play. It was something from another world. In 1983, Irving finally won his NBA title. It took a trade to bring Moses Malone to Philadelphia. Malone anchored the paint the way Mel Daniels had once anchored it in the ABA. He grabbed every rebound, he controlled the interior. He freed Irving to operate on the perimeter the way he had always been built to operate. That year, the 76ers went 65-17 in the regular season. Irving punctuated it with his famous rock the baby dunk over Michael Cooper of the Lakers. He cupped the ball on his forearm, soared to the basket, and slammed it home in a single flowing motion. Pure Baylor, pure flight, pure Dr. J. Now let us pull back and look at everything together. Because when you lay all 7 names next to each other, you stop seeing a list, you start seeing a map, you start seeing the basketball education of one of the greatest players who ever lived. Tiny Archibald gave Dr. J the playgrounds, the speed, the fearlessness of a small man in a big world, the proof that creativity and quickness could beat size. Jerry West gave Dr. J the standard of the perimeter, the clutch jump shot, the cold competitor who never wilted when the game was biggest, the proof that skill and toughness could carry you to the finals over and over. Oscar Robertson gave Dr. J the vision of total control, the all-around player who refused to be defined by one role, the man who was averaging triple-doubles before anybody had a name for it. Wilt Chamberlain gave Dr. J the understanding of physical force, what it looks like when one body is so dominant that the sport itself has to adjust, the reminder that some things in basketball are simply beyond explanation. Bill Russell gave Dr. J the definition of winning, not scoring, winning. The player who built his legacy on championships and championships alone, the proof that the greatest value on a basketball team is the ability to make your teammates better. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gave Dr. J the standard of longevity, the GOAT, the player who carried his excellence across decades, across teams, across eras. The player whose career, when viewed in full, stands above every other career that has ever been completed. And Elgin Baylor gave Dr. J everything else, the flight, the creativity, the vertical game, the courage to take the game somewhere nobody had ever taken it. The style that Irving would claim as his own, and then carry to heights that Baylor himself never quite reached. There is something important to understand about why Irving leaves modern players off his list. It is not bitterness. It is not old man stubbornness. It is not a failure to appreciate what Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or Stephen Curry have done. It is something more thoughtful than that. Irving believes in creators. He believes that the highest honor in basketball belongs to the first person who imagined a new way to play, not the person who optimized it later with better training and better technology. The person who dreamed it first. Kobe Bryant was magnificent, but Irving has noted that Kobe was, at his core, an optimized version of Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan was himself an evolution of the style that Irving and Baylor pioneered together. The lineage is real. The creativity flows in one direction, from Baylor, through Irving, through Jordan, through Kobe. But in Irving's mind, the original creators carry a weight that the refiners can never fully match, no matter how brilliant they become. And then there's the finished career rule. Irving will not rank active players. He thinks it is premature. Legacy requires completion. You cannot judge a story while it is still being written. That is his standard. And it is a more serious standard than almost anything modern sports analysis applies. Julius Irving's 7 favorite players are not names from the past. They are the roots of the game you are watching right now. Everything you love about modern basketball traces back to these 7 men. They built the road, and then Julius Irving flew across it. He did not invent flight from nothing. He watched Elgin Baylor and saw what was possible. He studied Oscar Robertson and learned that limits were made to be broken. He watched Bill Russell win and understood that championships were the only real measuring stick. He saw Wilt Chamberlain force the league to rewrite its rules and grasped the meaning of true physical dominance. He watched Jerry West drain clutch shots in the biggest moments and understood what ice in the veins actually looked like. He watched Tiny Archibald light up the league at 6 feet and 1 inch and felt the fire of playground basketball burning inside him. And then he went out and became the player who connected all of those lessons into one body, one career, one legacy that still echoes through every arena in the world. That is who Julius Irving is. That is what his list means. That is why these 7 players are not just his favorites. They are pieces of him. They are the men who built Dr. J before Dr. J even knew he was being built. When he says he's my GOAT about Kareem, he means it with the full weight of someone who has spent his entire life studying the game at the highest level. When he names Elgin Baylor as his personal favorite, he means it with the gratitude of a student who never forgot his teacher. And when he skips the modern names, he does it with the patience of a man who knows that great stories deserve to be finished before they are judged. Julius Irving flew higher than almost anyone. But even he knew he was standing on someone else's shoulders, and those shoulders belonged to 7 men who changed basketball forever, before most of the world knew how to watch it properly. Because even the greatest players who ever lived needed someone to show them the way up.
6 consecutive double-doubles.
We're blue-collar workers.
He has played the entire game.
Going to be what's going to happen.
He's the best ever is not something Charles Oakley would say about just anybody. And when you understand who Charles Oakley actually was, that statement hits differently. This is not a man who handed out flowers. This is not a man who clapped for effort. This is not a man who smiled and nodded when someone had a nice game. Oakley was the kind of player who made the NBA uncomfortable just by walking into the building. He played 19 seasons. He finished with 1,282 games played. He grabbed 12,205 rebounds. He fought, he bled, he protected, he demanded. And in all that time across all those seasons with all those rosters and all those locker rooms, the list of players he truly respected could fit on one page, a short page. That is what makes this list matter. Oakley did not respect most people. He criticized stars. He challenged legends. He questioned teammates people loved and icons people worshipped. He did not care what the crowd thought. He did not care what the media said. He had his own code, and that code was harder to pass than any combine test in the history of professional basketball. So if you already know how rare real respect was in Oakley's world, use the hype feature and give this video some hype, because this list is not about fame. It is about who survived the old NBA test, and very few people did. Now, before we get into the 7 players, you have to understand the man doing the judging, because Oakley's approval meant nothing if you did not know who was approving you. Charles Oakley came from Cleveland. He went to John Hay High School. He then went to Virginia Union University, where he was named the 1985 NCAA Division II Player of the Year. He averaged 24, 3 points and 17, 3 rebounds per game at that level. He was not a project. He was not a developmental piece. He came into the NBA already knowing who he was and what he was there to do. The Chicago Bulls drafted him 9th overall in 1985, and from the first day he walked into that building, he made it clear that soft play was not going to happen near him. His statistical record tells part of the story. With the Bulls in 298 games, he averaged over 10 points and over 10 rebounds per game. With the Knicks across 727 games, he kept that same consistency. Over 10 points, over 10 rebounds. More than 33 minutes per night. Every night. For a decade. He then went to Toronto, played 210 games, and kept producing at a high level even in his mid-30s. The man did not have off nights. He did not coast. He did not accept bad practices or soft attitudes. That standard applied to himself first, and then to everyone around him. His philosophy of respect was simple but brutal. Two-way play, physical courage, loyalty to teammates. Role discipline, the willingness to accept pain and not complain about it. The ability to be coached hard without folding. He did not care about your scoring average if you disappeared in the fourth quarter. He did not care about your awards if you could not guard someone on the other end. He did not care about your reputation if you were not willing to take a hit to help your team. He did not care if the whole world loved you, if he did not see you do the things he believed mattered. Oakley was playing in a different arena from the one most people watched. He was not watching the highlights. He was watching the moments in between. The screen that did not get set. The defensive assignment that got abandoned early. The loose ball that nobody dove for. The timeout when a player sat down and looked at the floor instead of looking at his teammates. These were the moments Oakley was watching, and most players failed them constantly without ever knowing they were being graded. This is why some very famous names did not make his list. He criticized Patrick Ewing for a lack of physical leadership in critical moments. He had a long-running dispute with Charles Barkley, questioning Barkley's defensive commitment and his choice to join a loaded Houston Rockets team late in his career. He even dismissed the historical consensus around Bill Russell, arguing that 11 championships built alongside multiple Hall of Fame teammates did not prove individual greatness the way many people assumed. For Oakley, you had to impact the game on both ends. By yourself, with no excuses. That is the filter. That is the standard. 7 players passed it, and today we count them down in reverse order. Starting from the bottom of the list and working our way to the top. Starting from the most surprising name and working toward the most defining one. Every single player on this list reveals a different piece of Oakley's code. And by the time you hear them all, you will understand why his respect was worth earning. Number 7. Tim McCormick. If you do not know Tim McCormick's name, that is part of the point. He was not a superstar. He was not a household name. He was not the kind of player people put on posters or argued about on television. He was a veteran big man, a center who played the 1992-1993 season as Oakley's teammate on the New York Knicks. And somehow, Tim McCormick ended up on Charles Oakley's short list of most respected players in the NBA. How? That is the story. And the story starts with silence. When McCormick arrived in New York that season, Oakley did not speak to him. Not a word. Not in the locker room. Not in the hallway. Not in practice. Months went by. McCormick showed up, did his work, tried to prove himself, and got nothing back from Oakley. No acknowledgement, no greeting, no conversation, just silence. And that silence was a test, even if McCormick did not know it at the time. Oakley did this because passivity was a liability to him. A player who could absorb silence without breaking, without running to a coach to complain, without checking out mentally, that player had something. Oakley had seen what happened to players who needed constant validation. They became unreliable. They became players you could not trust in tight games. They became the person in the locker room who took up space without adding to the foundation. But showing you could handle silence was only the first part. The second part required something more direct. The tension broke during a heated practice scrimmage. Oakley was physical. He was always physical. He was aggressive in practice the way most players are only aggressive in playoff games. And McCormick had taken enough. Frustrated by Oakley's physical play, McCormick snapped. He struck Oakley in the face. Let that land for a second. A player hit Charles Oakley, in practice, on the New York Knicks, a team where Oakley was the undisputed enforcer, the alpha, the man who had protected Michael Jordan himself in Chicago. McCormick hit him, and Oakley smiled. He did not retaliate. He did not escalate. He smiled, extended his hand, shook McCormick's hand, and from that day forward, he spoke to him regularly. He brought McCormick into his circle. He treated him like a teammate worthy of his time and his trust. McCormick later said something that captures the whole story in one line. He said Oakley never really respected him until he hit him. That is the code in its purest form. Oakley did not need you to be talented to earn his respect. He did not need you to be famous. He did not need you to be a star. He needed you to have courage. He needed to know that when things got physical, when pressure built and breaking was an option, you would not break. You would push back. To most people in the world, a punch ends a relationship. To Charles Oakley, a punch started one. This is why McCormick belongs on this list. Not because of what he averaged or what he won, but because he showed Oakley the one thing Oakley could not teach and could not fake. He showed him he would fight. Number 6. Kevin Durant. Now the list shifts. From a player no one expected to a player everyone knows. But the reason Kevin Durant earned Oakley's respect is just as surprising. Because by every external measure, Durant and Oakley should not have connected. They play completely different styles of basketball. Oakley was a bruiser, a rebounder, a physical interior presence. Durant is a 7-foot scoring machine who can shoot over almost anyone alive. Oakley came from an era where defense was a cultural requirement. Durant plays in an era that celebrates offensive output above almost everything else. And yet Oakley respected him, clearly, specifically, without hesitation. The reason comes back to the code. Oakley often criticized modern NBA players for a lack of role discipline and physical toughness. He did not always like what he saw in the new generation. Players who understood their role on paper but did not live it out on the court. Players who had talent but chased individual glory at the expense of team structure. Players who could not handle adversity without making it public. Players who needed everything to be going perfectly before they were willing to give everything. That pattern bothered Oakley deeply, because it was the opposite of how he had approached every single season of his career. Durant was the exception. Oakley praised Durant for his deep understanding of his responsibilities on the court. Not just what Durant could do with the ball, but what Durant understood about how his skills fit into a team system. Oakley cited him alongside LeBron James as one of the modern players who truly understands what it takes to win. That is not a small compliment from a man who does not give small compliments. What Oakley saw in Durant was efficiency without selfishness. Durant could score in any offensive system. He could get his points whether the team needed him to create or whether the team needed him to move without the ball. He adapted. He submitted to the system when the system required it. And he did all of this under enormous media pressure, through team changes, through public controversy, without letting the noise destroy his focus on court. Oakley understood that kind of focus. It reminded him of the internal discipline he had required from himself and from the players around him across his 19 seasons. You do not have to be a bruiser to understand discipline. You do not have to average 10 rebounds to understand your role. Durant scored at will and still understood that winning was bigger than his stats. That is a very specific kind of intelligence. Oakley recognized it. Durant did not fit the old enforcer image. He did not protect teammates with his fists or intimidate opponents with his size, but he fit Oakley's deeper rule. Know your job. Do it well. Put the team first. And do not let the outside world pull you away from what you are supposed to do. In Oakley's world, that is enough to earn a spot on the list. Number 5. Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant never played with Charles Oakley. He was on the other side. He was an opponent, a competitor, someone Oakley watched from across the court rather than beside in the locker room. And that makes Oakley's respect for him even more revealing. Because Oakley's bar for opponents was higher than his bar for anyone else. A teammate got to prove himself through shared work, through daily practice, through moments of trust built over time. An opponent only got to prove himself in the moments Oakley was trying to stop him. And if you could still earn Oakley's respect while he was actively trying to make you fail, you had done something remarkable. Kobe earned it. Oakley's respect for Bryant was rooted in one word: competitiveness. Not just the will to win, because many players have the will to win when things are going well. Kobe had the will to win when things were falling apart. He had the will to win when he was tired, when he was hurt, when the crowd was against him, when the roster around him was not good enough. He competed through all of it. And he competed with a ferocity that Oakley recognized because it reminded him of the one player Oakley respected above almost anyone else. Oakley saw Kobe's drive as a direct reflection of Michael Jordan's approach. That comparison is not something Oakley made lightly. Jordan was not a reference point Oakley used loosely. Jordan was the standard. And to say Kobe reflected that standard was to say Kobe operated at a level most players in NBA history never touched. In historical debates, Oakley ranked Kobe Bryant ahead of Magic Johnson. He highlighted Bryant's elite two-way play, his scoring range, and his refusal to back down from physical matchups. That last part is critical when you understand who is doing the judging. Oakley's world was built on refusing to back down. It was the core of everything he valued, and Kobe refused to back down from anyone, under any circumstances, at any point in his career. Oakley disliked soft play, he disliked passive players. He disliked anyone who disappeared when the game got hard. Kobe was the opposite of all of that. Kobe got louder when the game got hard. He got more aggressive. He became more difficult to guard and more dangerous to challenge. His focus sharpened under pressure instead of fading. Kobe also brought the defensive commitment that Oakley required. This was not just a scorer who happened to play defense sometimes. Kobe invested in defense the way great defenders do. He studied opponents. He guarded the best player on the other team. He took pride in stopping people, not just in scoring on them. For Oakley, that combination was rare, especially in someone who had already become a legend. Most players at Kobe's level could have relaxed on defense, and no one would have blamed them. Kobe never relaxed. Oakley respected Kobe because Kobe played like he was always trying to prove something, even when he had nothing left to prove. That kind of internal fire was not something a player could manufacture. Either you had it or you did not. Kobe had it in a way that only a very small number of players in the history of the game ever truly had it. Oakley recognized that, and he gave Kobe the only thing Oakley ever gave freely, which was his honest, unfiltered word that this player was the real thing. Number 4. Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady came into the NBA young, very young. He came in with long arms, a smooth release, an ability to score at all three levels that most players spend their entire careers trying to develop, and a reputation that arrived before his game had fully caught up to it. He was going to be great. Everyone knew it. The question was how and when. Charles Oakley became part of that answer. When Oakley joined the Toronto Raptors in 1998, the team was young and talented and needed a veteran who could provide the kind of physical foundation that allowed skill players to grow. McGrady was one of those skill players, a young, slender wing scorer who had all the tools to become elite, but who was playing in an NBA that was not gentle. The late 1990s NBA was physical. Defenses could make contact. Big men could punish drives. Opposing players would test a young scorer early and often to see what he was made of. Oakley understood that environment better than almost anyone alive because he had been one of the people creating that environment for other teams. He knew exactly what happened to young, thin scorers who tried to attack without interior protection. They got beaten up, they got frustrated, they stopped attacking, and then their development slowed, sometimes permanently. He made sure that did not happen to McGrady. By setting hard screens, securing rebounds, and physically protecting McGrady from retaliation after big plays, Oakley gave him something that cannot be measured in a box score. He gave him space. He gave him the safety to attack the basket and know that if someone tried to send a message, a reply would come. Oakley respected McGrady's scoring ceiling. He saw a player with the potential to be one of the most gifted offensive players the league had seen. But he also understood that potential had to be developed inside a structure. McGrady had to learn how to survive the physical nature of professional basketball before his talent could fully emerge. What Oakley valued most was not McGrady's highlight plays, it was McGrady's willingness to accept hard coaching. He listened. He did not push back with his ego. He did not act like a player who had already arrived. He understood that the veterans around him had information he needed, and he was humble enough to take it in. That willingness to be coached by Oakley meant something. Many young players with McGrady's gifts would have assumed the talent was enough. McGrady treated the veteran presence around him as a resource instead of a challenge to his status. Oakley respected that. He respected the work ethic, he respected the acceptance of structure, and he respected the way McGrady developed under pressure into one of the most dangerous scorers in the game. McGrady did not earn Oakley's respect by doing something dramatic. He earned it by showing up every day, doing the work, accepting the coaching, and growing into the player Oakley believed he could become. Number 3. Vince Carter. There is a moment in the early career of Vince Carter that tells you everything about how Charles Oakley saw the world and what he required from the players he mentored. Carter was a rookie. He was already electric. He could do things above the rim that made arenas lose their minds. He had one of the most natural athletic gifts the NBA had ever seen. His vertical, his body control, His ability to hang in the air past the point where most humans would have already fallen back to earth. Vince Carter was a spectacle, and he knew it, and audiences loved him for it. But during an early regular season game, Oakley watched Carter settle into his perimeter game. Carter was taking jump shots. He was comfortable out there. He was getting looks and not always attacking, and Oakley grew frustrated. Because Oakley saw what Carter could not fully see yet. No defender in the league could stop Carter if he drove to the basket. The jump shot was fine, but the drive was unstoppable. So Oakley grabbed him during a timeout. Not gently, not with a quiet suggestion. He grabbed him and told him directly, "Drive to the basket. No one can stop you when you attack the rim. That is where your advantage lives. Stop settling for comfortable." Carter listened. That moment, that timeout conversation, that demand from a veteran enforcer who had seen 19 seasons of basketball and knew exactly what the game required, helped unlock something in Vince Carter. It helped him understand that athletic gifts were only powerful when used aggressively, that settling for the easy shot was a waste of everything he could do when he fully committed to the attack. Carter's rim attacking style developed in part because Oakley demanded it, because someone told him clearly and without apology that he was not using his gift the right way. Oakley respected Carter's athletic ability from the beginning. You could not watch Carter play and not respect what he could do physically. But Oakley respected him more after Carter started using that ability with force. After Carter started attacking instead of settling. After Carter accepted the push and grew from it. This is tough love mentorship in its most direct form. Oakley was not trying to be Carter's friend in that moment. He was trying to make Carter better. He was treating him the way he himself had always been treated. The way he believed all serious players should be treated. With honesty, with high expectations, with the refusal to accept less than what the player was actually capable of. Carter did not resent it. Even after Oakley's time in Toronto ended in difficult circumstances, Carter maintained his respect for what Oakley had given him. He understood that the push was a gift, that the hard conversation was worth more than a soft one would have been. The demand to be better was a form of belief. Oakley would not have grabbed Carter during that timeout if he did not believe Carter had something worth pushing toward. Indifference would have been the real insult. The fact that Oakley cared enough to be direct was the highest compliment Carter could have received from a man who did not waste words. Oakley respected Carter because Carter had the gift, accepted the demand, and became something more dangerous because of it. Number 2. LeBron James. The story of Charles Oakley and LeBron James begins before most people ever heard LeBron James's name. It begins in Ohio when LeBron was 16 years old. Not a drafted player, not a professional. A high school kid with enormous physical gifts and a reputation that had already started to grow before anyone outside Ohio fully understood what was coming. Oakley saw it coming. He took LeBron under his wing during that period. He helped prepare him for what professional basketball actually felt like. Not the highlight version, not the marketing version, but the physical reality of it. The contact, the fatigue. The mental strain of playing against men who had been doing this for years and who would not move gently out of the way just because a teenager had talent. Oakley shielded LeBron during that period. He controlled the environment around him. He made sure that LeBron was not thrown into physical matchups against older professionals before he was ready to handle them. This was not coddling. This was preparation. There is a difference between protecting someone from difficulty and protecting them from damage they are not yet equipped to absorb. Oakley knew the difference because he had spent his entire career understanding it. He had watched what happened when young players got broken too early by situations they were not built for yet. He was not going to let that happen to LeBron. The most famous story from that period involves a private pickup run in Chicago. Oakley introduced LeBron to his idol, Michael Jordan. He facilitated that connection. He brought 2 generations of greatness together and made sure the moment happened correctly, in the right setting, with the right energy. That speaks to Oakley's understanding of what young greatness needed. Not just physical preparation, but the right relationships, the right exposure, the right environment to grow. Years later, when critics attacked LeBron's legacy over his championship record, Oakley defended him. He made the argument clearly. LeBron James elevated every single roster he ever joined. He made his teams better. He made individual players around him better. He sustained a level of performance across multiple decades that almost no player in history had ever managed. That kind of consistency, combined with that kind of impact on his teammates and franchises, placed LeBron on Oakley's personal Mount Rushmore of basketball greatness. and Oakley put him there ahead of Magic Johnson. That is a significant statement. Magic Johnson is one of the most beloved and celebrated players in NBA history. He won 5 championships. He changed the way people thought about point guard play. He was brilliant and spectacular, and his impact on the game was enormous. Oakley still ranked LeBron above him, because in Oakley's code, the ability to elevate those around you, to carry a franchise through seasons of pressure and still perform at the highest level, was worth more than the beauty of the individual game. What Oakley saw in LeBron before the world fully had him was not just physical talent. It was the capacity to carry weight, to be the person a team depended on, and to actually meet that dependence. To stay consistent when consistency was the hardest thing to maintain. To grow across eras without losing what made him special. LeBron earned Oakley's respect first as a young player willing to be guided, and then as a professional who validated everything Oakley had seen in him before he was old enough to vote. Number 1. Michael Jordan. This one is different. Every player on this list earned Oakley's respect, but Michael Jordan did not just earn it. He became the definition of it. He became the standard by which Oakley measured everything else. When Oakley respected Kobe, it was because Kobe reminded him of Jordan. When Oakley respected LeBron, it was because LeBron could carry weight the way Jordan carried it. Jordan was not just on the list. Jordan was the reference point for the entire list. The relationship began when both men were Chicago Bulls. From 1985 to 1988, Oakley was Jordan's on-court protector, his shield, his physical deterrent against the brutal Eastern Conference defenses of that era. Oakley took pride in that role, not because it was glamorous, because it was not. He was not the one making the highlights. He was not the one getting the magazine covers. He was the one making sure the man making the highlights could keep making them without being destroyed by someone bigger and meaner, trying to slow him down. That is a specific kind of selflessness. And Oakley did not do it reluctantly. He did it because he believed in what Jordan was doing. He believed in the standard Jordan held himself to every single night. He saw up close what Jordan's work ethic looked like before the world understood it, before the championships, before the legacy was fully written. Oakley was in the room when Jordan was still becoming Jordan. And what he saw was something he had never seen before, and would not see replicated by many players after. Jordan's drive was absolute. It was not conditional on how the game was going. It was not dependent on whether the team was winning. It was not affected by whether the defense was treating him fairly or trying to hurt him. Jordan attacked. Every possession, every quarter, every game. He accepted physical punishment and then attacked again. He did not complain about it to the officials. He did not shrink from it in the fourth quarter. He absorbed it and turned it into fuel. For Charles Oakley, a man who had built his entire career on the premise that toughness was non-negotiable, watching Jordan take contact and keep attacking was the most validating thing imaginable. It proved that talent and toughness were not opposites. They could exist at the highest level in the same person. Jordan was the proof. The relationship they built during those 3 years together in Chicago went far beyond basketball. It became a friendship built on shared experience, on the unique kind of trust that develops when one man knows another man has his back in the most physical sense. Oakley protected Jordan from opponents who wanted to end his night early. Jordan knew that, and that knowledge created a bond that did not fade when they stopped being teammates. How strong was that bond? When Oakley wrote his memoir, called The Last Enforcer, Michael Jordan wrote the foreword. That alone is not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is that Jordan wrote it without reading the book first. He did not ask to review the chapters. He did not send a team of lawyers to fact-check the manuscript. He did not require assurances about how he was portrayed. He simply trusted Oakley completely and wrote the foreword on the strength of their relationship alone. Think about what that means for a man in Jordan's position. A man that famous, that careful about his image, that precise about how his legacy is presented, trusted Charles Oakley so fully that he committed to supporting his story without needing to know what the story said. That is not a business decision. That is a declaration of loyalty that goes deeper than most relationships most people have in their entire lives. It is the kind of trust that only forms between two people who have been through something real together, who have stood beside each other in rooms where things were difficult and never looked the other way. Jordan trusted Oakley because Oakley had never once given him a reason not to, and Oakley respected Jordan for the same quality Jordan displayed in that trust. The absolute commitment to the relationship. The willingness to bet everything on a person you believe in. Oakley respected Jordan's scoring efficiency. He respected the way Jordan moved without the ball, the way he found angles other players could not see, the way he made decisions in the final seconds that most players would not make in a casual practice. He respected the work ethic, the legendary hours Jordan put into his craft long before most of his teammates arrived in the gym. He respected the fact that Jordan never pointed at someone else when a game was lost. He never made it about a bad call or a teammate's mistake or the conditions of the floor. He owned his performances, every single one. That kind of personal accountability was something Oakley understood in his bones, because he had lived by it his entire career. But most of all, he respected the consistency. Jordan was who he was every single time he stepped on the floor. There was no down game. There was no night when he decided it was acceptable to coast. Every night was the night. That is Charles Oakley's code elevated to its highest expression. Do not give less than everything. Do not accept soft. Do not back down. Do not settle for what is comfortable when what is required is difficult. Be the same player in the fourth quarter that you were in the first. Be the same professional on Tuesday in December that you're in Game 7 in June. Michael Jordan was all of that. From the first moment Oakley saw it up close, he recognized it. And he spent the rest of his life using Jordan as the benchmark against which every other great player was measured. That is why Jordan sits at the top. Not because he was the most famous, not because he had the most rings, not because the world agreed on it, but because Charles Oakley, a man who respected almost no one, who criticized legends and challenged icons, and built his entire identity around the refusal to be impressed, saw Jordan play and decided that this was what greatness was supposed to look like. 7 players, 7 different stories, 7 different reasons Oakley's code gave its approval, and every single one of them earned it a different way. That is the beauty of what Oakley built with his standards. He was not looking for one type of player. He was not looking for one type of character. He was looking for the quality underneath the type, the core thing that made someone worth trusting when the season was on the line, and the easy path was available, and a lesser person would have taken it. Tim McCormick, who proved that courage did not require a spotlight. You did not have to be famous to earn real respect. You only had to stand your ground when standing was hard. Kevin Durant, who proved that modern players could still understand the game the right way. That role, discipline, and system intelligence were not relics of the past. They were still the foundation of winning. Kobe Bryant, who proved that an opponent could earn respect through obsession, that competing with everything you had every night against every opponent in every situation was its own kind of proof. Tracy McGrady, who proved that accepting guidance was not weakness. That listening to veterans and allowing yourself to be shaped by harder hands was how young talent survived and grew. Vince Carter, who proved that gifts had to be used with aggression to matter. That settling for comfort was a betrayal of potential. That attack was always the right answer. LeBron James, who proved that greatness could cross eras and carry weight across decades. That the player who made everyone around him better was the player who left the deepest mark. And Michael Jordan, who proved all of it at once, at the highest level, for the longest time, without making any of it look like work, even when it cost everything he had. Oakley's list matters because it was never about popularity. It was never about championships on their own, or scoring titles on their own, or the things the world agreed were important. It was about who could enter Oakley's world, meet his standard, and not fold when the pressure came. It was about who could be trusted when trust meant everything. It was about who would still be standing in the hard moments. Not just the famous moments, the hard ones. That is a short list. It always was, because real respect was never meant to be easy to earn. The harder it was to earn, the more it meant when you had it. And in Charles Oakley's world, having it meant something that no trophy and no headline could ever replace. And if you had Charles Oakley's respect, you had passed one of the hardest tests basketball ever invented.